legal cannabis industry has unlocked generational wealth opportunities across the country. But the industry's regulatory complexities, constant state of change, and speed of evolution drive confusion for entrepreneurs and investors alike. On this podcast, we'll interview the industry leaders who are shaping the future of the legal cannabis industry to help our listeners understand these idiosyncrasies. This is Cannabis Unlocked, hosted by Key Investment Partners. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Cannabis Unlocked. I'll be your host today, Jordan Euclid with Key Investment Partners. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Joe Hodas, the Chief Marketing Officer of Wana Brands. Joe, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Well, thank you, Jordan, for having me. I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And I think, our listeners are going to be really excited to hear your story today. Obviously, the industry heard a major announcement a couple weeks ago after Canopy announced their acquisition of Wana Brands. So certainly we'll get further into that announcement and the strategic rationale of it. But to start with, we'd just love to learn a little bit more about you, Joe. Could you explain a little bit about your career background and how you ended up getting into the cannabis space?
You bet. And it's an interesting one, at least from my perspective, of course. Talking about myself, so I like to do that. So my first entree was in 2010. I was a partner with an ad agency here in Colorado, and one of the folks who worked with me came back from lunch and said, "Hey, I just had lunch with a guy who has a pot soda company, and they want some brand work." I thought, well, that sounds pretty interesting. Of course, the whole creative team at the agency was like, "Yeah, we'll do that as long as we get samples." And anyway, we ended up doing a little bit of work, and that company was Dixie. And I just found it fascinating to see. One of the things we did was intercepts at dispensaries. So we were trying to understand who's going into dispensaries, what are they buying, why are they buying it? And it became very clear very quickly to me that it wasn't maybe what I presumed to be the case in regards to who was purchasing products and why. And I had always been a consumer and certainly was in favor of legalization, voted for it here in Colorado. But seeing that data and really understanding the potential for this industry got me very interested. So long story short, I kept in touch with the Dixie guys for the next several years, even though my agency, which was fairly conservative, we had big clients like Excel Energy and Centura Health. And so having cannabis clients wasn't really on their roadmap. So that became a little bit of an issue. We couldn't work with Dixie once it became really visible. So I said to the guys one day, "Hey, I'd love to work for you." So in the first week of adult use legalization in Colorado, I became the CMO of Dixie Brands and spent 4 years there as their CMO, and really got to watch the entire industry unfold in that first couple of years rather. Everything from getting deeply involved with legislation and regulation to how brands were going to develop and what would be successful. And one of the things I saw from my vantage point was the strength of the gummy. And you could see it very clearly with Wana in the Colorado market that they were poised to dominate. And so I was kind of watching from the sidelines, but had known Nancy from really from my early days with Dixie. In fact, we joke about the fact that we'd go down to the Capitol quite a bit and run into each other there as we were all lobbying for the same regulation changes at the time. So that's really where I got to know Nancy pretty well. And full circle, a few years later, just had the right place, right time. I jumped around to a few other cannabis-related companies. One of them a publicly traded company, which was a great experience, and then another one is a meter dose inhaler called Go Fire. Mm-hmm. Great technology, but just hit the funding wall of 2019 and then COVID, and it just didn't work out. And then I called Nancy, and she had not filled the role of CMO, and I said, "Hey, I'd love to talk." And 2 weeks later, I was starting my gig at Wana in my basement because that was the first week of COVID lockdown here in Colorado.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's great to hear that, you and Nancy Whiteman had built such a great relationship. She, the CEO of Wana, for those who don't know, has just a fantastic reputation in the industry. Wana, obviously one of the original brands in Colorado, and really one of the few brands that we've seen be able to maintain and hold top market share in a market as it's gone from inception to maturity. So would love to just hear the story of Wana Brands and how Nancy and you and the team have been so successful in building and maintaining such a strong brand with such incredible brand loyalty.
Sure, and yeah, thank you for that, because it's I will tell you that having been on the outside of Wana and looking in, I was envious. Now that I'm on the inside and looking out, I'm very proud of what the company has accomplished. And you mentioned Nancy and this relationship that she and I built, and I think sometimes when you don't work for somebody, you can have a great relationship and think they're wonderful people and great leader and all that good stuff. But it's not until you really work for them that you begin to understand maybe if there's some red flags or maybe some things that do better and differently. And I got to be honest, and Nancy's not, she may never even hear this, right? So this isn't just blowing smoke. She's a wonderful leader. She's amazing. And the reason the company is where it's at today is because of her vision and her guidance and the team that she built around her, and understanding how to focus on bottom line profitability. There was such a race, there still is, not was, it's not past tense. There still is such a race for this top line revenue and market share. And Nancy has always grown really intelligently and has never really put herself into a situation where she was forced to do things that maybe would run afoul of her business sensibilities. And so we've been able to grow profitably with no debt, no additional investors, and we maintained, I think, the core of our brand, which is really we're a brand that delivers quality, premium products, a lot of innovation. And I don't think you see that. You see a lot of also-rans in cannabis. There's companies that throw something in a pretty box and think it's, they can call it a day, or that copy whatever is the latest and hottest trend. We try and use the proverbial idea of skating to where the puck will be versus where it is, and that has served us really well. We saw that with some of our innovation around, for example, our quick product line. We were not the first to claim to have a fast acting product, but we spent 2 years in R&D on that product, going through 20, 30 different technologies before we landed on the one that we chose, because we knew it was the best and the right one. And we knew that there was still an issue to solve in the edible space with products that needed to act more quickly and also have a defined off ramp, so that you could have an experience that was a little bit more consistent time over time. So that's really been the philosophy of Wana from the start, and we continue to follow that today.
That's fantastic, Joe. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about those fast-acting gummies. For the listeners' benefit, one of the big problems with edibles is that the time for onset in traditional edibles can be 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And as many first-time edibles users have found, unfortunately, if you eat an edible, you wait for the high to hit you, it seems like it's not happening, then you redose and end up getting an experience much different than you were hoping to find. And so that's why a fast acting product like what you're talking about can be really valuable, as it mirrors the onset time of flower or vape inhalation of THC and hits your system much faster. So we'd just love to hear about how you decided to develop that product and how the market has reacted to those fast acting gummies.
Sure. And that was a great description. It's funny, talking about my earlier days in the industry, the early days of legalization. We're at such a different place now than we were back then. But some of the issues from the early days still remain. And one of those was this idea of edibles and having a more predictable, defined experience. And so early on, companies would claim to have fast acting because they had, lecithin or some other ingredient in their product deck that they would claim to be fast acting. But the truth is that it's all about the molecular size of the THC and how it's absorbed. And so we did a ton of research. We looked at all kinds of nano-emulsification products, and really what we came to was there was one company, Azuka, that had a really great product, but it had not been applied to a gummy or a food product at that point. So we worked with them pretty closely to develop our gummies based on their formulation. And what it does, it's kind of fascinating. It actually encapsulates the Delta-9, because Jordan, the experience you just described, part of the reason why people get into trouble with edibles is not only does it take a while to have effect, but it's actually a different high, because when you digest it, the liver converts that THC into 11-hydroxy from Delta-9. Delta-9 is the format that you'd be most familiar with from smoking. it becomes 11-hydroxy, which is a more body high, also a little bit, it hits you a little heavier, and that's why people get a little anxious, or they feel uncomfortable sometimes with edibles if they're too strong. So this particular technology, it kind of masks the molecule so that it doesn't get digested and converted to 11-hydroxy, so it remains in that delta 9 format, which means it has a much more closer parallel to a smoking experience than standard edibles experience. As such, because of the molecular size and because of the fact that you're not waiting for the digestive process in order to feel the high, it actually goes directly into the bloodstream as you're digesting. It has a generally, on average, a 15-minute onset time. And something else I love about it is it's a 2 to 4 hour offset, because the other piece about edibles is sometimes, particularly if you have that experience where you consume too many of them, it can last 6-7 hours and people are still feeling that. And I mean, it's fun to have edibles, but maybe you don't want it for 6 or 7 hours. Maybe,
Sure.
Maybe 2 to 4 hours is for the length of the concert, wherever you're at, is really the better option for you. So there's a lot of technology behind it, and consumers immediately, I think, identified that and really found a product that they liked. So the quick SKUs in Colorado quickly broke into the top 10 SKUs in the market within 2 months of being on the market. They're still there. We have the #1 selling 1-to-1 ratio product with our product line of Quick, and that's our strawberry margarita. And we named them all. The flavor profiles are all cocktail drinks. They're all kind of happy hour inspired cocktail drinks, because we felt like this was more of a happy hour type product. It wasn't your typical edibles experience. And we've now launched them in California. We've launched them in Oklahoma. We've launched them in Canada. So we have a number of different markets now where the Quick is continuing to perform really well, and in many cases to be the only true fast acting product in the market.
That's fantastic. And Joe, I'd love to talk to you about the different form factors of cannabis, really focusing on the main ones that dominate the market today, those being edibles, flower, and vapes. And what do you think about brand loyalty as it relates to each of those three, and what has driven the rationale for Wana to really focus on that first edibles category so far?
Yeah, well, and we've had a couple of forays into, like, for example, vapes. So one of the cornerstones, back to the question about our success and Nancy's philosophy, one of the cornerstones for us is, can we do something special and differentiated and premium to be in line with who we are as a brand? And the answer is, if we can't, we're probably not going to get into that space. And so with vapes, we were early on with disposable C-cell technology. We're the first to launch that in Colorado. So we have this great differentiated hardware that allows us to deliver a Wana experience in our flavor profiles that we chose working with some of our extraction partners. And we were the #1 selling disposable vape for a period of time. And then that technology began to proliferate throughout the market here in Colorado and elsewhere. And those price points began to plummet. And it's a race to the bottom, particularly in vapes. I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of vape companies out there who, while they maybe sell volume, aren't making a really nice margin on those. And so we looked at it and said, okay, everyone has this technology. We can't really find a strong enough technology that allows us to differentiate. And we pulled out of the vape space. So, we're not willing to, we are willing to look at our product set and say, does this fit or does it not? And if it doesn't, well, we pulled out of it, right? So, so I think that, to your question about brand loyalty and why we've chosen to stick with where we are, we really feel like the gummy in particular, we don't look at it as a gummy. We don't look at it certainly as a food product. We look at it as a delivery mechanism, and that gummy happens to be a really great delivery mechanism for cannabinoids and for other gross ingredients and for minor cannabinoids and terpene profiles. And there's a lot of opportunity that it offers as a delivery mechanism that other formats just don't necessarily. And so it also allows us to flex our technology muscles and really create a differentiated product from the rest of the market. Flower, we don't grow our own flower. So while we could partner with somebody, I feel like flower varies by market in terms of loyalty. Here in Colorado, because we started as a vertically integrated industry, I think a lot of people just buy flower from their dispensary that they know, if that's what they like. In California, you have a lot more of that brand loyalty for the grows and the farmers and the areas in which it's grown, a little bit more of Napa Valley type of an approach to branding of flower. And I do think you can build loyalty there too. And I know that while prices have plummeted in California significantly, there are a few brands that have premium flower that is sought after, and they're maintaining their price points. So it is possible to generate brand loyalty, but I think a market like California is vastly different than, let's say, in Oklahoma, where I don't think that anyone is looking for necessarily a premium brand. I think they're looking for the best quality product they can get for the right value and the right price.
Absolutely. And you bring up some really great and interesting points about needing to understand the idiosyncrasies and differences on a market by market basis, right? And obviously within cannabis, because it's not yet federally legal, you can't move product across state lines because then it becomes interstate commerce, which again is federally illegal still today. And as you mentioned, each of the state regulatory regimes have very different infrastructures, requirements around vertical integration or not. Some states like Florida initially didn't let you sell edibles, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd be curious to learn the story of Wana's historic growth and plans for growth going forward. How many states are you in today? And why have you chosen to go the path of not growing your own flower? And what challenges and opportunities has this very complicated idiosyncratic regulatory structure provided for you and the team?
Well, if I start with challenges, we're not going to get through this discussion because I'll still be talking about it 2 hours from now. There's a number of different ways to approach scale and market expansion. We chose to go what we'll call an asset light route, right? So we don't have licenses and facilities in each market because we do believe at some point in the not too distant future, legalization will occur. And I think that at that point, having multiple facilities throughout the country probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we have this asset light model where we find the right licensing partner in each market, and we don't own the facility. We allow them to own it, and it varies anywhere from a basic licensing agreement all the way up to more of a co-packing type of agreement where we own the marketing, we own the sales, and they just manufacture and produce for us in that market. And I wouldn't say that one is easier necessarily than the other, because when we have control of sales and marketing, that is generally a better outcome for us, but we have to invest in people. We have to understand the market locally, and it's obviously more costly and time consuming. Conversely, when we do just a straight licensing agreement, we don't have control over how much they will represent our brand in the market. And while we do have really strong SOPs and our contracts are really strong about how they're supposed to market and sell our product, at the end of the day, if you don't have direct control over it, it can be challenging. So we've had some relationships have worked great. Others we've blown up because it just wasn't the right relationship for us and or for the partners. So as of today, we are in 12 markets. We're about to launch Nevada on December 1. That'll be 13. Plus, we're in 9 provinces and territories in Canada. So our Canada market share is, I think, pretty impressive. It's about 40% of edibles are Wana in that market. So we have pretty dominant market share in Canada. And we're going to add probably another 4 to 6 markets over the next 6 to 12 months. So all in, we'll be close to 20 by the end of next year. And that's pretty sizable from a footprint standpoint. And I think even with our 12 today plus Canada, I believe we have the largest footprint of any edibles company. So in contrast to like an MSO, we're kind of an MSO, but we're just one product, one brand.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you found it more challenging or easier to find partners that can grow consistent supply and can manage the supply chains to your standards over time? Have you found that has gotten easier as the industry's matured?
So that's a great question. And I think that what we have done, back to the technology pieces, we've also found a partner that has enabled us to create a custom blend of about 30 plus botanical terpenes that we can ship because they're botanical. They're not necessarily derived from cannabis. Exact same molecular structure as a cannabis derived terpene. And with that custom blend, we're able to achieve consistency of the product across all of our markets. So gummy is made using distillate. We then reinfuse this terpene profile to give it both the flavor as well as the effect that we're looking for from either our indica, sativa, or hybrid blends. And that's how we maintain that consistency. So as long as there is flower and trim available, and we have the parameters for what the yield and the potency of that has to be in order to make the product properly, we are good. So supply chain has not been a huge issue. It has constrained us a little bit in certain markets at certain times when the entirety of the market is light on available flower and trim. So we've had, Illinois or Maryland, early days of those markets where there just wasn't a ton of flower. But we, had we grown our own, we wouldn't have been in the same situation. It's just a matter of the licensure and the cycles particularly within new markets before you to get to a steady state where you have enough flower to supply the market appropriately at all times.
That makes sense. And going back to Canada, what do you think it is in particular about that market that has enabled Wana to be so successful and so dominant in terms of your market share?
A couple of things. One, we have a great partner in Canada, Indiva. They're wonderful. They just do such a great job of everything from the marketing to the sales and the production. So that's been a big piece of it, is having the right partner. Two, I would say that we were early. We got to that market when there were some local players that had some pretty good products, but there weren't a ton of bigger, I'll call it either U.S. or Canadian national players that had the quality and the consistency of product that we do. So when we launched in that market, I think it did two things for us. One, it actually demonstrated to us that our brand could cross into the international realm, so to speak, because a lot of people knew Wana, right? They were excited to have Wana in Canada. Couldn't wait for the product to get there. So there was that pent up demand. But two is we were able to introduce what a truly consistent and quality product was to a market where there just wasn't a ton of those in the market at the time. So we got there pretty early. And I don't think we're going to have 40% market share forever. I'm not foolish or not unrealistic about where that market's going to go. But I think we've gotten a pretty good stronghold there, which has been great.
That is great. And I would have to imagine your dominance in Canada was partly what attracted Canopy Growth to your company as well. And so obviously, as we mentioned earlier, Canopy Growth a couple of weeks ago announced their acquisition of Wana Brands, or rather option to acquire Wana Brands once federal legalization happens. And so this was huge news in the industry. And I'm sure our listeners would love to learn a little bit more about how that transaction came to be effectuated and what you believe to be the benefits on both Wana's side and Canopy's side for bringing the businesses together.
Yeah, it was really exciting. We've been working on it for several months with them. And so a number of questions you just asked. I mean, I think, in terms of how it developed, we've always known that as a standalone brand, one that doesn't have investors, one that doesn't have debt, in order to continue to expand at the rate that we're going, we would need some partners. We need some help to be able to do that, right? And Canopy is a great partner for that. They have a tremendously deep bench of experience with their own executive team, as well as their partnership with Constellation and some of the benefits that come along with that. So they were the right partner from that perspective. But we've met with a few partners along the way and had some opportunities. And this one is one that, as we met with them, we realized there was much more of a shared philosophy in regards to the plant, in regards to Wana as a brand and where we're heading. There was a very strong bond and relationship around that formed between the two companies that I think gave us the confidence to know that they were the right partner for us. Now, for us, I mean, to be honest, it's the best of all worlds. We have this great partner that we will have access to more officially once legalization occurs, because the transaction was actually for the option to purchase us once legalization occurs in the US. So in the meantime, we function in a business as usual basis or fashion, because they are not allowed to have any input or direction into the company. But we also have great partners we can lean on for input and assistance as we look at what is the best way to scale, potentially relationships they have as well we can tap into. So it's really I think a great win for us. And then for them, it gives them a really strong brand and distribution foothold in the US when legalization does occur, and then they can plug right into that.
Yep, absolutely. And diving further into that transaction structure, again, for the listeners' benefit, because Canopy Growth is a Canadian licensed producer that's listed on the NASDAQ, they're unable today to have any plant touching operations in the US where it's federally illegal. Otherwise, they'd be kicked off that exchange. And so they structured this as an option to purchase Wana pending federal legalization, very similar to the structure that they had with Acreage Holdings a couple years ago to purchase that multi-state operator, again, contingent on federal legalization. And so my understanding is that the structure is they paid you 85% of the purchase price today in cash, which is 295 million. And then that remaining 15% will be purchased once federal legalization occurs based on an enterprise value of Wana at that time. Is that the right way to think about the structure?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I think the numbers, quibbling, but these 297.5 was the actual number. But yeah, it's about that.
That's fantastic. And so in the interim period, because obviously Canopy has some hemp and CBD related products in the US, Wana has THC products in Canada where it's federally legal. So it seems like there are at least some good entry points to start working together in that interim period before legalization occurs. Is that accurate?
Certainly on the CBD side, I think we're really excited to hear that. I mean, on the THC side, like I mentioned, we really have a great partner in Indiva, and things are going really well. So we have not discussed that. But on the CBD side, definitely, I think there's some great opportunities there. They have a couple of good brands they work with. They have really strong distribution. We have a good CBD product in our Wana Wellness line that has not probably gotten the proper distribution and attention that it needs. So there could be some great opportunities there.
Fantastic. And on that point, would love to just get your thoughts on growth strategy overall. Where do you see Wana going from here? Is it new states, new SKUs, M&A, all the above? What are your thoughts on growth?
I would say all the above, other than we haven't really delved a whole lot into M&A at this point. And I think we have so much opportunity with our existing market expansion and SKU expansion that acquisition there really isn't a need for it for us at this point in time. The SKU piece of that is really, there's the market side, so we'll go to new markets and that's great. And we're going to continue to expand. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but on the SKU side of things, we just launched, for example, our new line called Wana Optimals. And so there's two products underneath that line currently. One is a sleep formulation. The other is called Fit, which features THCV, and it really can help with everything from just energy and focus to food cravings as well. So we're just getting that into market. It's a completely different way to consume cannabis. It's meant to be a daily use gummy that does not get you high, even though we're selling it in dispensaries, but it's a very different product than anything else that's out there like it. So we have more of that coming down the pipe. Our innovation pipeline is really robust, and I think that's where a lot of our growth is going to come from. Is these new SKUs and new technologies.
That's fantastic. Any new SKUs that you can announce that we should be on the lookout for in the coming months?
Well, for so long I couldn't talk about the Fit. Now it's out there, so I can talk about it. I will say that in Q1, we'll be dropping a very, very exciting new addition to our line that I can't share a whole lot about right now, but it is a Wana. Let's see, how can I put this? It's a Wana hallmark to look at the market and say what isn't being done right or well, and how can we come in and do it better and scale it and create a real viable product line. And that's kind of what we're doing with this next launch.
That's fantastic. I'm curious if you've seen any trends in terms of dosage over time, right? Because I think a lot of states, when they come online, the edibles tend to be very high potency. And I think we've seen in some more mature markets that the typical dosage comes down to, call it 5 or 10 milligrams. And there seems to have been a lot more demand these days for microdose type edibles, 1 to 2 milligrams. So I'm curious how Wana views those trends and if you've developed new SKUs associated with different dosages.
Well, we do have, there's the regulatory environment, to your point, on the recreational side, which requires, in most cases, no more than 10 milligrams. Oregon was 5, and now they're moving to 10 starting January 1. And I was actually, it was interesting back to my earlier days. I was part of the shift that happened here in the Colorado early on. I think it was in the first quarter of 2014 when there were a couple of incidents of people over consuming edibles and some really tragic situations occurred. And at the time, we were putting out 100 milligram single serving type products. And, when the state said we need to change this and we need to put a cap, no more than 10 milligrams, each piece has to be divisible, packaging has to be divisible by 10. It was hard from a manufacturing production standpoint, but we all knew that it was the right thing to do, particularly for new cannabis consumers coming into the market. It was important that, even 10 milligrams, even 5 milligrams was in some cases is still a lot for a new consumer to try. And they were relying on the bud tenders who maybe consume 100 milligrams, don't even think about it, right? So there was this disconnect, and I'm really happy that for the most part, most places have adopted this idea of, tens and fives. And I think the microdose trend will continue to grow. Right now, we don't have anything below 5 milligrams, but we're in development on some products that I think are going to fit in that 2.5 milligram microdose category. In the meantime, luckily gummies are fairly divisible, so
Yeah.
you can half a gummy and be okay as well. But I think that it's an important trend for new consumers. Now, on the flip side, I hear from people all the time are like, 10 milligrams doesn't do anything for me. I don't want to buy and eat 10 gummies. Well, in most cases, there are medical markets and medical programs where you can buy those higher dose products, which we make as well. We make a 50 milligram gummy on the medical side too. So, I do believe there should be products for both. I don't think everyone should be relegated to 10 milligram products, but by the same token, for the average consumer just walking into a store, I think 5 to 10 is a good place to be.
Absolutely. It's a good place to be. And so then as we think about the competitive landscape moving forward, where do you think the biggest competition is going to come to Wana in the future? Is it from other cannabis brands in the market today? Is it from alcohol, tobacco, traditional CPG getting into cannabis? Is it from the MSOs developing their own brands? What do you think it's going to look like in the future?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question. And I think that there's a couple of different answers, and all of which is dependent upon legalization, right? Because if legalization was to occur, and then let's say Amazon or some other large company like that with massive distribution and e-commerce platforms can get into the game, then I think that becomes our biggest worry and our biggest concern. I think that let's not talk about legalization. Let's just say if it's steady state where we are today, I think it's within the industry, and I think it's companies that either look at a market like Oklahoma where there's unlimited licenses and you get all these brands and it's a race to the bottom, right? It's constantly just who can promo the biggest discounts and price their products the cheapest. That is really challenging for businesses like ours, where we are bottom line focused. And we want to have a good, viable, strong company ongoing. So that creates really, I think, unrealistic expectations on the part of the consumers. And we also have dispensaries, the retail environment that this is my own personal sort of thing that I, kind of get on a soapbox about, but they don't give consumers enough of a credit for being able to choose for themselves, right? So we have dispensaries who come to us and say, well, we want to have all of our gummies at the same price point. That makes no sense to me, right? Because consumers in any other category can say, I want to pay a premium for a better product, or I want the cheapest product because, that's what I'm concerned about is value, right? In terms of the price point. So I think a lot of the competition is coming from price compression within the industry. It's lack of sophisticated businesses, as well as a concern for the consumer and not giving them enough credit for being sophisticated themselves. I think if legalization does occur, you have these large whether it's alcohol or tobacco or, like I said, Amazon, those become our biggest competition. My guess is that will get swallowed up. I think a lot of them will look at it and say, either A, I don't want to get involved in the state-by-state regulation, because that does not go away for a while, in my opinion, with legalization, or B, they say, let's just buy up some companies and get into the business that way. So that, that certainly is feasible. And then the last piece you mentioned was the MSOs. I've yet to see MSOs that can create really strong brands. There are a lot of MSOs out there with their own brands, but in terms of them really capturing a lot of the market share, if you look at the top brands, most of those are not MSO brands, unless you know some I don't, Jordan. But I don't. The data I look at shows that it's usually independent brands that are the top brands in the market. But where it gets a little bit complex is that you see, and it's worse in some markets than others, but MSOs tend to fight with one another. So if you're being produced by one MSO in one market, they don't want to carry you in their stores as a different MSO because there's a competitive environment maybe in a different market. So it spills over on the state by state basis. I think that's where the MSO piece gets a little challenging.
Yep, that makes sense. That is where it gets challenging. And we have seen a little bit of MSOs also looking to acquire third-party brands, like with GTI acquiring Incredibles and that sort of thing. Is that a trend that you expect will continue going forward?
I think so. Almost all the ones that we talk to, they're looking to build a house of brands, and some of them want to do it by outright acquisition. Some of them do it by licensing and manufacturing. Some of them do it by distribution, but they all want to build these houses of brands, just like you saw in the alcohol industry. I think it's no different. You know, you have distribution that has multiple brands underneath single umbrellas and that kind of thing. So,
yep, makes sense. And Joe, obviously operating as a cannabis business, a lot of the traditional marketing avenues that are open to traditional CPG are not open to, right? Because groups like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn prohibit cannabis marketing. You know, a lot of text carriers have prohibited anything cannabis related and that sort of thing. So how have you been able to navigate some of those challenges, and where have you found the most success in being able to successfully market Wana to both dispensaries and the end customer?
So it continues to evolve in terms of what we have access to. So in Colorado, for the majority of the time I've been in this industry, we didn't have access to out of home, like billboards and things like that. A year ago, they changed that, right? So now I can actually run billboards here. So this summer I did a great campaign around our Summer of Quick. We did this big promotion that was very integrated. We had a van, we stopped at a bunch of dispensaries. We did a whole like layout of this whole summer theme, and really worked well, right? Bringing the product to the dispensary and to the consumer. And for the out of home piece, I used a digital mobile billboard that I would target, let's say, downtown on Saturday night around where the bars are. And the messaging was all about a new product where you can have a happy hour without the hangover. So we were able to be a little bit more targeted in terms of our approach and our message. In other markets, you don't have access to that. Or in, let's say, Nevada, ton of billboards, but they all have to be approved by the state, and they're all very bland. You can't have fruit, for example, on there. You can't talk about flavor profiles. So they're very much just, you know, shop here, you know, Pure Leaf Dispensary, New Leaf. You don't see a ton of really compelling creative. You just see a lot of billboards. So our approach has been really one of focus on in-store, focus on education. That's a big piece of what we do. We use our digital platform. We drive about 40,000 users a month to our website, where we have a tremendous amount of content. And then we have iHeartJane on the back end, where consumers can search for products and find exact inventory at stores and kind of drive them through that way. Now, we can't close the sale because we can't transact on our site. So it's not, I call it faux e-commerce for us, because it's not really e-commerce, even though it kind of feels like it to the consumer because they're clicking through. But that's one way that we're able to drive direct sales. And then on the marketing front, again, combination, we use out of home, we use digital. We're running a campaign now. I mentioned that fit product. So we're doing a very targeted digital campaign where we're focused on identifying consumers who are focused on weight loss and sleep, not necessarily cannabis consumers specifically. So finding new audiences is a great opportunity for us to help grow our market share by bringing those people into an understanding about what cannabis can do for them. And then I'd say the last piece is really this in-store connectivity with the consumer. We know they're going to be in store. We know, so we do a lot of pop-ups. We did this, van promotion, like I mentioned, this summer. That was really impactful to our sales as well as to the brand overall.
Fantastic. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon on this discussion. Really informative, and I hope great for our listeners as well. as we wrap things up, would love to just ask, are there any requests you have for our listener base? Obviously, if you live in one of those 12 states, please go try Wana Gummies. But anything else you'd like to request? Any job openings or something of the like?
No, I don't. I don't know about that specifically, but I guess I would say for the listener, if you, whether you're currently a cannabis consumer, whether you're considering cannabis as part of your lifestyle overall, educate, understand what the products are, what goes into those products, and make decisions based on the quality of the product and not so much the price point, so that we can show retailers in the industry as a whole that there are discriminating consumers out there and people do have the ability to make better choices.
Absolutely. Always
And be
looking
safe and
for
responsible.
Yep. Making safe, responsible, and better choices. I love that.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining. This was a blast, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Jordan. Take care.
You too. Take care.
Bye.